Hello, I'm Tom Kelly, and I have the privilege of introducing this concert and the season of the Cambridge Society for Early Music. First of all, a word about the Cambridge Society. Ever since the 1940s, when Erwin Bodke, a great keyboard player and scholar and professor at Brandeis, began giving concerts here and there in the Houghton Library and then in Sanders Theatre in Cambridge, there has been a Cambridge Society for Early Music that continues to exist and continues to do what it can to support and encourage the making of and the listening to early music. We all know sort of what we mean by early music. We sort of mean either unfamiliar music from some time far in the past, or sometimes familiar music whose performance tradition has been interrupted somehow, and we need to figure out how to play it so that it sounds the way it was meant to sound. Anyhow, we know what it means, and we've been doing it for a long time. At the moment, the Cambridge Society has as its purpose to bring before the public in the greater Boston area young performers of early music of all different kinds. And with that in mind, there's a season of concerts, each concert produced several times in Cambridge, Weston, and Beverly Farms. There are three of them, three such concerts or groups of concerts this season. And the first one's coming up, and it has to do with medieval music. The next one is Baroque music by a wonderful group of young performers. And the third one is classical music, music of the Mozart period by a terrific young string quartet. All three are going to be great. The first one that I'd like to introduce you to, and I encourage you to go to if you're not already at it, is a concert called Veni Redemptor Gentium, very fancy Latin, by a group called Concordian Dawn. They're a medieval group led by Christopher Preston Thompson, and they do all sorts of music, but in a category that we now call medieval. Let's think about medieval for a second. Medieval means Middle Ages. And that comes from literary people and others who think of the Middle Ages as what comes between classical antiquity of Greece and Rome and the revival of classical antiquity in the Italian Renaissance. Well, that's fine for the literary people, but for the musical people like ourselves, the Middle Ages is not the middle of anything. It's the beginning of everything. It's the beginnings of the music that we have, of the music that people began to write down. There has always been music, of course, and there are lots of cultures where nobody writes down any music. But all we have from the Middle Ages is music that people have written down. The dance music, a lot of the other music, with a few traditional exceptions, is unfortunately lost to us. And most of the writing down in the early Middle Ages was done by people who knew how to write, namely church people. So we have lots of church music from the Middle Ages, and only as we get later into the Middle Ages do we begin to have secular music, songs, dances, things like that. Another fact about the Middle Ages is that it's longer than all the rest of the history of music put together. If you consider that the Middle Ages begins for us with the first music we have recorded, which is sort of in the 9th century, and goes through to when? I don't know, the middle of the 15th century? There's 5 or 6 centuries. And from the 15th century to now is about the same length of time, or a little bit less. So to say the Middle Ages is not really to say, to talk about one thing, but about a great, great many things. We can't talk about all of the wonderful songs and dances and instrumental pieces that are going to get played in this concert by Concordian Dawn, but I would like to show you, just for the fun of it, some of the wonderful manuscripts and other sources that the Concordian Dawn are going to be using as source material for their concerts. Here is a manuscript, a beautiful manuscript from England. This is a rather late one, 15th century manuscript of Gregorian chant. And it sort of stands for the theme of this concert. This is a a page that shows the Advent season and the Christmas season. That is the season of preparation for the birth of the baby Jesus, and also of the coming of Christ into the world in the Christian tradition. We're going to hear we're going to hear some Hebrew cantillation, some Sephardic traditional music. But the title of this concert, and I think maybe the first piece the Concordian Dawn will sing, is called Veni Redemptor Gentium, an ancient hymn sung to a tune that you can see there indicated by the orange arrow. And I'm sure everybody here can read perfectly the close-up version of the tune, Veni Redemptor Gentium, a Gregorian hymn with a bunch of different verses all sung to the same tune and all in Latin, the text attributed to St. Ambrose of Milan in the 4th century. This is what most medieval music looks like. It looks like Gregorian chant because it is Gregorian chant, and the great majority of the music we have is chant. But that's not all we have. We have some other wonderful stuff, and one of the linchpins of this concert lies in the library, the beautiful library designed by Christopher Wren of Trinity College in Cambridge, at the University of Cambridge. And in that beautiful library is one of their treasures, a scroll that's covered with music. And all the music on this scroll is in the form of carols. Now, we say Christmas carols, but carol really means a kind of a dance whose music has a refrain and verses. And all of the pieces in this scroll are carols, but they're not all Christmas carols. One of them, maybe one of the most famous one, is this one here. I'm sure you can read perfectly that it says, Deo gratias Anglia, and over on the right-hand side is Our King went forth to Normandy. It's what's called the Agincourt hymn, or the Agincourt carol, and it's about the King of England going off to Normandy and winning the Battle of Agincourt and beating the French. Many people call this the Agincourt roll, but it also includes an awful lot of Christmas carols. Here is one of the carols. It has, maybe you can read the words across the top. There is no rose of such virtue as is the rose that bare Jesu. I think this is a carol that Concordian Dawn will sing. And this beautiful text was also borrowed by Benjamin Britten for his Ceremony of Carols, which you may know. Several pieces from this beautiful scroll are going to appear in our concert. Here's one of the great events of the Middle Ages, the idea that somebody decided maybe instead of just singing chant, you could add another voice to decorate the chant, to make a kind of a multi-voice polyphonic composition. And here I've marked in yellow brackets the fact that here's a piece that has one text but two voices. And this is a piece that's going to appear in our concert. And one of the great things that sets Western music apart from the music of almost all other cultures is that we sing not only one line, but two melodic lines, or maybe even more. One of the great collections of this polyphonic, that is multi-voice music, is a gorgeous manuscript now in Florence that originally was made for Notre Dame Cathedral, and has a frontispiece that shows the three divisions of music according to the philosopher Boethius. There's Musica Mundana at the top. There's Lady Music with her lightsaber, indicating that music governs all of the planets and the way the world works. There's Musica Humana in the middle. There's Lady Music with a whole bunch of people singing. Musica Humana. That doesn't really mean the sound of voices, though. Musica Humana means those balances that keep our mind and soul and body related, those bodily humors, those relationships, those small whole number ratios that keep our bodies and souls in balance with each other. And down at the bottom is the least important part of music, musica instrumentalis. That's the music that we can hear, the music of instruments and the music of voices. Anyway, that frontispiece to this beautiful manuscript gives us some music. Here's some music by a man whom we know only from the lecture notes of an English music student in Paris, whom we know as Master Perotinus, who wrote, as we learned from our English student, four-voice music. And here is a particular piece named as being by Master Perotinus. This is a Christmas piece, Viderunt omnes. We only have the first three syllables. And maybe you can see that the top three voices go noodle, 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 while the bottom voice sings a single note for a very, very long time. Those are the first three notes of Gregorian chant called Viderunt omnes, and the top three voices are elaborate decorations of it. It's wonderful stuff, and I think we're going to hear some of it in this concert. Another manuscript that Concordian Dawn are using is this beautiful manuscript now in the medical school of the University of Montpellier. It ended up there at the French Revolution when a lot of manuscripts from monasteries and cathedrals got moved around, if not destroyed. This one has beautiful decorations. You can see things at the top. Here's a lover giving a rose to his lady, and things at the bottom here are knights dueling with each other and fighting with savage beasts. One of the pieces in this manuscript is one that our group are going to sing. And maybe you can see from the layout how the piece is made. It actually is a piece for three voices. One of the voices is on the left column, one of the voices is in the right column, and one of the voices is written across the two lines at the bottom. They all begin with Alleluia. And maybe you can read the words on the left and on the right, and maybe you can't. But what it really is a kind of taking the word Alleluia, splitting it apart, and putting more and more stuff in between. So it goes Alle psalite cum luia, Alle corde voto psalite cum luia, Alle and blah, blah, blah. Each time you sing it, it gets longer and longer. And the voices switch off. So first I sing Alle psalite cum luia, and then the other singer sings it. It's a very cool kind of voice exchange piece that works well on instruments too. So we may or may not hear the vocal version of it, but it's a great manuscript and a great piece. Here's another manuscript from which we're going to hear some music. This is a manuscript made for the nuns of the monastery of Las Huelgas in Spain. It's one of not very many sources of music that we know was designed for use by women, and it's a great treasure for all students of medieval music and will come to the fore in this concert. One other thing, not exactly a manuscript, and actually a little bit late for our purposes, but one of the really cool sources of a lot of Christmas music is this song called Pie Canciones, Pious Songs, assembled by a Swedish schoolmaster for his students to sing. And it's all in Latin, and it all is pious songs, but they're borrowed from all over the place, including a whole lot of songs that we know, some of which we would not know if it hadn't been for this book. There's the tune of Good King Wenceslas, Tempus ades floridum, sanguinque flores, and so on. We would know that tune except for this book. Here's Puer nobis nascitur, da, 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 da. I don't know if you know that one. There's Resonet in laudibus, and on the right-hand page, in dulci jubilo. Don't I sing them beautifully? Anyway, here at the end is a song that I think we're going to hear in this concert, Per sodment hodie, which appears only in this song. It now gets sung all over the world, and if it weren't for this little song of Pie Canciones, we would not be able to close out this concert by Concordian Dawn as beautifully as I think they will do it. I am looking forward very much indeed to this concert. I hope you are too. And I hope that you will join us in this concert and in the other presentations of the Cambridge Society for Early Music. But first of all, for this wonderful forthcoming concert called Veni Redemptor Gentium by Concordian Dawn.